Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, June 7th, 2021, City of Lebanon Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. This will be a public meeting, so on all of the items, so I'm going to need whoever wants to speak needs to sign in, and we'll limit all discussions to 3 minutes. Okay, can we have roll call, please?
Mark Vanneman.
Here.
Chad Kiger.
Here.
Bruce Pauley.
Here.
Ron Edwards.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here.
Everyone is here. Has everybody looked at the meeting minutes from last month? And if so, a motion, please.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes. I'm going to take the agenda tonight, and the two longer ones I'm going to move to the end. The docket 2133 and 2134, Thomas Land and John Stathers, I'll take before the other, because these will be shorter than the other two. So we'll start with docket 2033, Thomas Land, requesting a development standard and variance for a minimum lot size to construct a two-family residential home. Property is located at 504 Franklin Street, and it is zoned, the property is zoned NB Neighborhood Business. Ben?
Good evening, board members. Just give you a little bit of background here. I've been working with the applicant for a few months now, and he's looking to make an investment on this property. It is zoned neighborhood business, which means a variety of different both commercial and residential uses are permitted here. The applicant did look at some commercial opportunities here. It's a residential lot, so in order to figure out how to do a commercial building here, it was difficult to figure out the size of the building and then also the parking that would be required to make it work on a lot like this. So then we discussed a variety of different residential options, and really what the applicant wanted to do is trying to find a way to put a duplex on this lot. The lot size is not such that it would meet the minimums for a duplex. What we require is for every unit of a duplex, you need 6,000 square feet, which means this lot would have to be at least 12,000 square feet in order to put a duplex here, which is a very big lot. It's almost more than twice the size of what the lot is now. So what I suggest to the applicant is if he could find a duplex structure that could meet the required setbacks, could provide the required attached 2-car garages, and that's a 2-car garage per unit, so basically four-car garage, then we could try to work something out. So and would look at just then the lot size variance in order to allow him to do that. This is an area that's a mix of different uses. You got to the west of it, if they pull up the screen for you here in the aerials, just look at the site here. To the west of it is a small commercial building. To the east of it is a single-family home. And then being on Lafayette Avenue here, or right off of Lafayette Avenue, you do have a mix of both multifamily, single-family, other two-family, and then there's some commercial mixed in, which is what the neighborhood business zoning district is for. So essentially how we approach this with the applicant as an infill project. You know, if somebody were out in a greenfield site and we're looking to build duplexes, it's much more easy, much more straightforward to try to meet those lot size requirements and provide something. Here we're dealing with an infill lot, and it's the hand you're dealt. You have a 7,200 square foot lot, it's an existing lot, and then trying to find a way to make it work. As I suggested, he can more than meet the required setbacks. I think he's got 10 feet on the side where 7.5 feet is required, so actually he more than meets the side setback requirements. He does have rear load garages for the cars. So we will not have garages and driveways on the front, which would be a challenge given that with it being that close to Lafayette. So again, we're keeping the cars on the alley to the back. And again, it's more than meets the setbacks. So here then is the variance request then for the lot size. The minimum required for the 2 units would be 12,000 square feet total, and this city lot is 7,200 square feet. So they are requesting relief from the lot size requirements in order to construct this duplex. For the record, in the staff report, we have identified the 3 criteria that need to be affirmative in order to approve the variance request, statutory criteria. And in conclusion, then staff has recommended approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the lot size requirement of the UDO. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any present time. Thank you, sir. Is Mr. Land available to come up and tell us a little bit?
Yeah. Hello. What would you like to know?
Just a little bit about it, if you've got anything.
Well, I just thought this would be a better application for the lot, seeing as how, like you said, I was looking for a commercial building, putting something up there in the neighborhood business, maybe constructing some sort of pole barn, commercial building, looking at some options. But I'd much rather do a duplex there, and what I was trying to do is build that and hold on to that for my retirement income. So that was my plan.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
It is a public meeting. Anybody in the audience care to speak either way on this property? Okay, seeing nobody coming forward, we'll close the public end of the hearing. Does the board have any questions or comments? And if not, look for a motion.
I make a motion, docket 2133, to approve the development standard variance request to permit relief from the lot size requirement of the UDO.
Second. Okay. Have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Bannerman.
Aye.
Chad Kiger.
Aye.
Bruce Pauly.
Aye.
Ron Edwards.
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything you're gonna do, and I hope you get it, use it for retirement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, the next one tonight will be John Stathers, which is docket 2134. Property is located at 607 North Park Street here in Lebanon. The property is zoned single-family SF2 and comprised of approximately .19 acres. The lot configuration is 60 feet wide, 140 feet deep. Ben?
Yeah, just a little bit of history here. The applicant came into the office with the intent to construct a two-car garage on this property. And investigating the amount of space available due to the lot size, we discovered that there wasn't enough space to fit a two-car garage here without requiring fairly significant variance for setbacks. So we worked with the applicant to figure out whether it made more sense to try to apply for the variance for the setback, which would have been more like 2 feet from the property line, or to reduce the size of the garage to just an oversized one-car garage so it could meet the setbacks and just be a little bit smaller in terms of the garage size. Ultimately, then, the decision was made to make the request for the oversized one-car garage. As you recall, the ordinance requires all homes to have an attached two-car garage. So in this case, with being added a garage, you're dealing with an existing lot, an existing house, a restricted area. None of these homes in this stretch were originally constructed with the garage, and they weren't planned for garages, so there's not space necessarily to do it. So you look up and down the street, and you've got homes that have attached one-car garages, some detached garages, some that are written in the back of the yard. So in looking at this with the applicant, it just made most sense to try to allow him to seek the variance request, to allow him to construct a garage at 16 feet wide rather than minimum 18 or 20 to get yourself a full two-car garage, and then request the variance to allow something smaller than that attached two-car garage. So that is what the applicant is requesting tonight. They're requesting relief from the two-car garage requirement to allow them to build the oversized one-car garage on the site. And again, due to just restrictions in lot size and space in order to construct that garage. So with that, again, for the record, the 3 criteria that need to be affirmative in order to approve of variance have been identified in the staff report. And staff recommendation, staff recommends approval of the development standards variance request to permit relief from the attached two-car garage requirement of the UDO. And we do have on the screen now the look at the overall site. Again, you kind of see just kind of the restrictions in terms of space available for the garage, and you can see how some of the lots around them have address the garage requirement. This one clearly has something as a single-car garage. This one's got something to the behind there. So that's where we're able to work with the applicant. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I think we're good at this time. Does the applicant have anything to add?
No, he pretty much summed it up.
Would anybody from the public care to step forward and address anything? Okay, we'll close the public end of the hearing and look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve docket 21-34.
Second.
A motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will go to docket number 2120, which is the Iron Man property. The property is located at 409, 417, 423, 503, and 507 North Lebanon Street. It was here a month ago or 2 months ago and is being brought back because of some mailing problems. Ben, would you?
Yeah, I'll start with the explanation why we're back. A day or two after the last public hearing, we had a neighboring property owner came into the office and said that they had never received their neighbor notice that we send certified mail. After some digging, at first we said, well, it hadn't been delivered. But when we dug further, we realized that some of the addresses on the envelopes had been jumbled. So when we did the mail merge and then sorted them, it sorted all the addresses but didn't sort all the cities and states with them. So we had some that were a Lebanon street address, but they were sending it to Georgia or something like that. So we had probably about a dozen envelopes that weren't addressed correctly, and the post office never sent them back to us, so we didn't know that they were addressed incorrectly before the meeting. So just to make sure that we had all of our bases covered and we're meeting all the notification requirements, we decided it's best to redo the variance requests for this project that were heard 2 months ago at the April meeting. So we did renotice for the neighbor notice and the newspaper notice. We basically started the process over again, got all the notices out for this meeting. The requests before you tonight are the same as they were for a couple months ago, but we'll definitely go through those again so everybody is squared away in terms of what's being requested. There are 8 different variance requests related to the project. If they want to pull the screen up for you here, we'll at least look at the site. This is the site on North Lebanon Street. It is a series of 5 residential lots. Originally, there were probably 3 or 4 years ago, it's been at this point, there were single-family homes on these lots that had been converted to apartments. I think there were 17 total units, and I think it was either 3 or 4 buildings on this site. So the applicant did purchase these about 3 or 4 years ago and tore the houses down, and then it's been working on a project for this site off and on since then. So this is the site. Lebanon Street's to the west. It is bordered by alleys on the north and east sides, and there are existing one alley that runs through the property, and actually this southern one is actually a platted street. So even though it operates like an alley, this is a street that runs through the project. Those alleys, the alley and streets are going to be request vacation from the Plan Commission here in a couple of weeks, so that's part of the process here. Let me switch then to the site plan, and then we'll go through each of the variance requests. Try to zoom in as much as I can so we can, might have to scroll a little bit so we can see. So this is the overall site. This is a unique site because it's zoned multifamily. It formerly was single-family structures, but it's zoned multifamily. Our multifamily zoning district, the development standards are set up with the assumption that if you're doing a typical suburban garden apartment type development, you have plenty of acreage, you're able to meet all the standards. But in this case, we are on an infill site in an urban area, as opposed to the way the standards were written, which makes it a little bit more challenging in order to figure out how exactly to address setbacks, open space requirements, et cetera, as it relates to that, because we're dealing with just a different site than what you would typically see from the typical suburban type apartment development. And I just lost the page I was on. Here we go. So in essence, what you see here is the existing pattern of development along Lebanon Street in that area is that the homes and or other structures are built street forward. So the structures are built out towards Lebanon Street, and then if there is any parking associated with it, it's either the side or behind. The way the multifamily standards are written, it's got a 50-foot front setback, so that building would be pushed way back if there's even space for it, and then parking would have to be in front, which is kind of counterintuitive when it comes to an urban design. So that's several of the variance requests are related to some of those setback standards and how the site's designed. So you can see here it's a 3-story apartment building that you see here. You can kind of see the footprint facing out towards North Lebanon Street. The parking that is required is all to the sides and or behind the structure. I keep going just a little bit too far and it switches pages. We do have the primary parking is behind the building, between the building and the alley. You see here, and there is a little bit of parking that wraps around to the south of the building you see down here. And then primarily the handicap ADA spaces are on the north side of the building because the entrances to the building on the north and south sides of the building, so making sure to get those ADA spaces as close to the entrance as possible is most appropriate. So this is the general site that you see here. Again, as I mentioned before, the alleys, there's a request to vacate those on the Plan Commission agenda in a couple of weeks, and you can see here that how that would be impacted here. Their primary entrance to the parking area would be off of Lebanon Street here south of the building that you see here. And then they certainly have a secondary access point that exits out onto the alley to the north of the building that you see here, as well as having their trash enclosure here in the north end that the truck would be able to pull into the parking lot, get the dumpster, and then go back out onto the street. My understanding is the trash trucks don't typically go down the alleys, so they usually stay out on the primary streets, but in this case they'll go through the parking lot, pick up, and then have to head back out to the primary street. So that's a quick rundown of the building itself. The site itself has not changed since your last request. The only thing that has changed is the number of units in the building, and that was in order to accommodate the required number of parking spaces. So the project has gone from 42 units down to 39. And in doing so, they are able to provide the required number of parking. So based on that, now that there are 24 one-bedroom units and then 15 units that are either 2 or 3 bedroom units, and then for every 7 units they require an additional space to accommodate guest parking. And then as part of one of the approvals from the board a couple years ago on Memory Hall, they had to provide some parking on this site, 14 spaces for that development, so that's accounted here. So the total parking is required is 86 spaces, and they have 86 spaces provided here. So they do meet the parking requirement for the site. But to then go through the development standards variance you see here, we'll start, as I mentioned before, because this is an infill site, it's the standards, the setback standards for the multifamily district really don't contemplate this type of infill development on this type of urban setting. So the first request is for front building setback. As you can see here, they're showing where the 60-foot front building setback would be required. If they were to meet that setback, it'd be pushed back an additional, probably, actually that's from the center line of the road, which wouldn't be right. So for the property line is here, 60 feet would probably actually be about halfway back on the property before the building could start. So you'd have the building pushed way back on the alley and all the parking would be in front, which in an urban setting, it's exactly the opposite of what you're hoping to do, is provide that building forward design along the street and then put the parking back behind. So again, if you're in a typical suburban setting, you're building a greenfield development, it would make a lot more sense and be a lot easier in order to accommodate a new development with a 60-foot front building setback. And that's just not possible. This lot would be unbuildable if you had to try to meet those setbacks. So in this case, they are requesting relief from that front building setback. They're proposing a front setback of about 7.5 feet, and that more closely mirrors the adjacent structures to the subject site. There is actually an apartment building to the north of them, and then it's actually a home to the south that's being used for an office use right now to the south, and this more closely mirrors the front building setbacks you see there. Let's see, let me find my spot. So the other building setback would be the side building setback. Again, we've got a 50-foot side setback requirement, so you got 60 feet on the front, 50 on the sides. Again, that significantly restricts what you can actually do on this site and when meeting those setbacks. So in this case, on the north end, they've got, I did it again. The north end, they've got an actual setback of 33.5 feet as opposed to the 50 that you see represented here. again, representing where if they were required to meet the setback, where it would be. And like I said, again, this front building setback line is actually probably back here in the middle of the property, so you're really restricting really any use of the property. So they have requested a relief from the side building setback requirement, do that 33.5 feet as opposed to 50. Again, related to the idea of kind of an urban infill project as opposed to a greenfield development, two additional variances requested, one for maximum lot coverage and two for percentage open space. They're very closely related. Looking at an urban design, the lot coverage for the multifamily district is 65%, which assumes that 35% has to be something other than either building or paved surface. Again, they're proposing about 85% max coverage that provides for the proposed building and parking area. So they are requesting relief from that. Again, when you're looking at urban sites, usually there typically is less green space that you see in an urban setting. So they are requesting relief to allow an urban design pattern to progress. And the same thing again with the percentage open space. 12% is required, and they're requesting relief from that percentage open space to allow for this urban style development to occur. A couple more things related to parking. This is one we've seen requested before where you're looking at an infill site that has some restrictions in terms of space. I believe it was actually the Forza project on South Lebanon Street. They were looking to do 18-foot long space as opposed to 20 feet. Again, I'm looking with the applicant. We felt like the only way you could fit 20-foot long spaces in here is if you reduce the number of parking spaces in some way, shape, or form, or reduce the setbacks almost to zero in some cases. So we felt that it was more appropriate to allow 18-foot parking spaces and make sure that we're providing the correct number of parking spaces on this site. So they have requested relief from that 20-foot space requirement to allow the construction of 18-foot deep spaces on the site. The next one, and related to parking, is parking space maneuvering in the right-of-way. And this is one where we took a conservative approach to this because I think our ordinance was written in order to ensure that parking spaces didn't back up into streets where you have much higher speeds and more volume of traffic. In this case, our ordinance doesn't specifically say street right-of-way, it just says right-of-way, and alleys do contain public right-of-way. So these 8 spaces on the north end here would back up into the alley. And so they are requesting relief for that parking space maneuvering requirement. Says you can't back up into a right-of-way to allow these spaces that would back up into the alley. This is not all that different from many garages that are on alleys. You have folks that back up into the alley all over the place in the downtown area because that's where a lot of garages are maintained. You don't have a high volume of traffic back there. They're not high speed. So the idea of backing up a car into an alley doesn't cause any sort of issues in terms of safety like it would if they were backing up onto, say, Meridian Street or something like that, or certainly on the Lebanon Street, which I don't think the state will let us do anyway. So that is an additional request, is to allow relief from that requirement to allow these 8 spaces to back up into the alley right away. A couple more just wanted to highlight real quick. One of them is lighting intensity, and this is one where we worked with the applicant a little bit. They wanted to make sure that there was appropriate lighting in the alleys, just for safety purposes. And what this allows them to do the ordinance says that at the property line, it has to be reduced to 0.3-foot candles. What they wanted to be able to do is for that light to also provide some lighting in the alley itself, which would mean that the lighting intensity would be slightly higher as you get into the alley. What they have done, though, is made sure that the light intensity, by the time it reaches the adjacent property owner's property line, it is under that 0.3. So in this case, if these properties were abutting each other, that requirement would say that they can't allow the spillage onto the neighbor's property. They're not going to have light spillage on the neighbor's property. It's light spillage in the alley for safety. But that technically doesn't meet the ordinance requirement because it does spill over their property line. So what this does is this variance will allow them to allow some light to light up in the alley for safety purposes, but not extend into the neighboring properties, so that we're making sure that we're not doing any light spillage on neighboring properties with that requirement. So they have requested relief from the light intensity requirement to allow an intensity that exceeds 0.3-foot candles at their property line that would provide light in the alley, but not exceed 0.3-foot candles at the neighboring property owner's property line. And the last one is minimum living area for dwelling unit. This is actually a similar request to that Forza project on South Lebanon Street. We do right now in the multifamily zoning district require a minimum living area of 750 square feet, which is actually a pretty big apartment. And they have units ranging from about 576 square feet, somewhere between 550 and 600, up to almost 1,000 square feet. So they do have quite a range. I think one of their one-bedroom units is less than that 750. Otherwise, everything else meets. So they do primarily meet those, but they do have some one-bedrooms that are small, and they're meeting demands that they see in the marketplace for some of those apartment sizes. And so they are requesting relief from that minimum living area requirement to allow some of those one-bedrooms to be smaller than 750 square feet. And I think I've covered all 8. For the record, staff has identified the 3 criteria that need to be affirmative in order to approve variance requests associated with this project, and they are in the staff report for the record. And finally, and I know you guys will probably go through each one of these individually in terms of vote, but staff has recommended approval of each of these development standards variance requests to permit relief from the various items that we just identified. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure there are some.
Dan, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I seem to remember these parcels having some concern previously in terms of stormwater infrastructure. Is that true?
Stormwater, no. Previously, though, there were some sanitary concerns.
Okay.
When this project came in, I'm going to say it was about 3 or 3.5 years ago. Those are old clay tile sanitary sewers that run north and south through that alley. There was a lot of infiltration on old clay tile. So the primary issue, the reason there were capacity issues is because, well, every time it rained, those sanitary pipes were full. About 2 years ago, the utilities did a lining project that did line those and eliminate all
so
that
that was
infiltration.
fixed.
So
Yeah.
that was fixed.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of storm sewer, no, there's no issues, and actually they'll be providing some underground detention under their parking lot to detain the water, which they're required to do by our ordinance.
Okay, that was going to be my next question.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple. On that we're just talking about, they have enough facility there to take care of this many units?
Yes. Lebanon Utilities has reviewed this. They provided comments at our technical advisory committee meeting, and they had no concerns about the capacity in the state.
Okay, back to the parking now. When we had this meeting a couple years ago, they were supposed to pave this, and that has never happened, correct?
It has not happened at this point, no.
Okay, so now is this going to be part of that plan?
Yes. Yeah, if they want to pull the screen back up, we'll make sure to show that summary. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it.
I have it here.
The memory hall.
So there's a summary on here where they've shown the amount of required parking spaces. And what they've shown here is the parking required. You see here, this 4th line says the memory hall, additional space required 14. Those are the 14
Yes.
spaces they were required as part of that. So they have accommodated that in this site.
Okay.
So a requirement from one parcel is going to be on another parcel?
Yes.
Kind of messy.
They're allowed to do off-site parking as long as it's within a certain distance of the site. So the ordinance allows for that. And so they're.
What happens if those parcels get sold individually?
Which parcels?
The one that has
Either
the
or.
parking or or memory hall?
So if they were to sell these parcels individually, we would make sure that those 14 parking spaces have been accommodated in some way. If this project doesn't go forward, I think that's not what you're saying?
Yeah.
So if they just sold the parcels individually, we'd have to make sure, but before any sale happened, that those 14 spaces were accommodated in some way. Whether that be, it'd likely be on the southern parcel, because that's the part of the property that meets the distance requirement to Memory Hall.
Are these parking spaces gonna be, I realize they're gonna be all together, but are they gonna be at one corner or whatever, or is it just threw 14 extra spaces in there?
Right now, they've accommodated the parking. I don't know if they're going to designate them separately somehow, or whether they're anticipating that. We'll let the applicant address that if he had any ideas for that. But as of this point, they've accommodated all the parking they need for this development and the 14 for Memory Hall.
Any other questions?
I have one. Since they've scaled back the number of units, is there any way to incorporate the handicap parking in the lot behind? I'm not real keen on the handicap spots and more parking there on that alley at the north end.
There is not, I mean, they have the bare minimum number of spaces
Okay.
required, and that includes the handicap spaces. So
Okay.
If they move the handicap spaces, some other spaces would need to be there in order to meet the requirement.
Right, that I was hoping it would all come out there.
I think that's it for now. Would the applicant care to step forward, please?
Good evening, my name is Joe Blake. For the record, I live at 4922 East 500 North Lafayette, and I'm one of the owners of Ironman Properties. I appreciate you taking the time to hear this again tonight. I wanted to talk just a bit about the project, but you all have heard that before a couple of months ago, so I'll give you just a little bit of background, but I think it might be helpful to address a few of the questions that just came up, if I may. Lori, you asked about the handicap parking not being on that north alley. That certainly could be moved anywhere. So we could push the handicap parking to the east side parking lot or the south parking lot. Either one probably would make more sense in the south since there's an entry door there.
That's what I was going to say, if there was an entry door, I just have a problem with that being right on the alley.
Yeah. So I think that's certainly doable.
I was hoping we could move all of them off the alley, but I know you're tight on the
Yeah,
space.
there are challenges. There was a question about separate designation of the parking spaces, the 14 parking spaces for Memory Hall. We don't plan to designate those separately. They would just be available for use. Any of the parking spaces there could be used by the individuals that might overflow from Memory Hall into this space. Regarding how that happens at transfer, if these are sold separately, full disclosure, we no longer own the flats of Lebanon and Memory Hall. However, when we sold the property, there was a covenant that was made that we would provide those 14 spaces for the current owner of Memory Hall. And the plan is, of course, to put them here on this property. So what would happen is if we ever sold this property, there would be a restrictive covenant of some sort or some type of a warranty on this property that would guarantee the use of 14 parking spaces by the owner of the Memory Hall Flats of Lebanon property. So that's how that would work. And yeah, like Ben mentioned, the storm sewer issue will all be handled on site by, that's currently under review. We have a design under review by Burke Consulting right now. Just a little bit of history. We did change to 39 units so that we could accommodate the additional visitor parking spaces that are required by the UDO. The property is replacing 17 formerly dilapidated units on those properties. It was 5 different houses and 2 different garages that we demolished. And when we did that, we backfilled properly, and so the site is all ready for development at this point. We are proposing 39 units, luxury market rate housing. We think there's a demand for that in Lebanon. We're big believers in Lebanon and what's happening here, and when we did, just as a reminder, when we did the Flats of Lebanon project, I believe it was an asset that was added to downtown. When we built that project, there were 42 units there. 67%, 2/3 of the people that moved into those units downtown in the new property were from outside of the city of Lebanon. Like most communities, Lebanon is seeking to attract workforce, and part of that is having quality housing for them. So it's a testament to the fact that if you build quality housing, especially in your downtown, that you will attract people from outside the city who maybe are working here in the city but have chosen to live elsewhere because of housing restrictions. Also regarding the kind of individuals who have moved into properties like this. I reviewed this last time, but the average income for the individuals who moved into the flats of Lebanon some 3 or 4 years ago, the average income was 16% higher than the average income of the Lebanon residents. So this isn't, by any stretch, it isn't affordable housing. It's quality housing, and it's hopefully attracting individuals who are seeking to be employed here in Lebanon. As Ben mentioned, it is an issue of zoning and the UDO being written for a suburban sort of a development, and just really handicaps the redevelopment of any properties like this which are already zoned multifamily, but frankly could not be constructed multifamily given the UDO as it is, hence the number of variances. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I have a question. Back to the 14 spaces. If the new owner decides to fence off his 14 spaces, will that interfere with you?
If the owner,
If you had a new owner
okay,
and they decided to fence off the 14 spaces, would that interfere with this?
If the Memory Hall owner decided to go in there and fence off 14 spaces and say, these are mine,
they don't get that right to do that.
They don't get the right?
I think part of the problem that we have now is this dual ownership of these two properties has completely complicated this scenario. Because my understanding, there was a covenant in the deed that said that those 14 spaces had to be provided in order to transfer ownership of the property. Is that not correct?
No, it was a commitment to provide the 14 spaces.
Commitment to the city of Lebanon.
Ben, you may have to help me out here.
It feels like the city's stuck in the middle of this, and
I don't think, Mr. Kiker, the city is stuck in the middle of it. It's an agreement between the owner of the flats of Lebanon, Memory Hall, and us as the owners of these properties, the seller of the Memory Hall. That's the agreement. And so we have I haven't looked at there's an actual agreement in the sales documents between the current owner of Memory Hall and the flats of Lebanon and us, Ironman Properties, that we will provide those 14 parking spaces.
Okay.
And as Mr. Edwards mentioned earlier, the plan was to take one of these lots and put the 14 spots
Right.
on there. What we decided to do instead of that is to go ahead and redevelop all 5 of the lots and provide the 14 spaces in the redevelopment. The city is not involved in this at all, other than the fact that of the requirement for the parking for both properties.
but still, when you sell the property, I'm confused to what these 14 spaces are going to do. I mean,
Okay, so let's say Ironman Properties builds this 39 units, the 86 parking spaces. When we sell the property, 14 of the 86 parking spaces are committed by restrictive covenant to the property to the south. It's as simple as that. We were obligated to provide 14 off-site parking spaces. We're choosing to do it on this property. So if we sold the property to you, Mr. Pauly, you would have the rights to the property except for the 14 parking spaces that are reserved for the flats of Lebanon.
So the parking spaces don't go with the property, is
No,
what you're
of course they
saying?
do. No, it's
But
just-
that's not what you're proposing.
No, it's simply the right to park on the property.
is he okay?
Okay? As an example, if I sold the property to Mr. Pauly, he owns the whole however many acres of property. He owns the 39 units, he owns the 86 parking spaces, but his obligation is to continue to provide 14 of those 86 parking spaces to the property to the south. He owns the 14 parking spaces. They're just committed to the other property.
It's paperwork, it's contract. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right?
No, we're talking right of access and rights versus property, right? So we're talking about 14 spaces that are supposed to go with Memory Hall. And you're talking about providing rights and access to 14 spaces that are on your property. These are two completely different things.
Right. To make sure, maybe I'm misunderstanding, so they aren't required to provide the property to Memory Hall for the parking?
Those 14 spaces that we voted on previously
Yes.
were to accompany Memory Hall.
There were 14 spaces that were required to
Not,
be
not,
provided.
not on another parcel where rights were sold or,
That's not true. They were always going to be offsite.
yeah, but it was the same owner. It was the same owner of both parcels.
Right.
Now we have
That
two
doesn't
separate
matter.
owners.
That doesn't matter who owns the property. There's a restrictive covenant that says that they need to provide those. If there are 86 spaces, there are 14 of them are reserved for the Memory Hall and Flats, regardless of who owns either property.
They just have to be provided.
They have to be provided.
I can technically go out and rent parking spaces from somebody, one of the neighbors, and say, here are your parking spaces. No, please.
Yeah, so the requirement was to provide 14 spaces. We knew even at the time of that original approval that they were going to be off-site because there was no room for them on-site.
Okay. I think I understand now. Thank you for clearing that up.
I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have.
So you're saying this is in the deed when you sold Memory Hall?
Mr. Pauly, I don't want to tell you for sure that it's in the deed. There is an agreement in the contract documents between us and the current owner stating that we are required to provide for them 14 parking spaces. I can't tell you for sure that it's in the deed.
Are there distance limits on where these parking spaces are located, Ben? I mean,
Yes.
could they technically be 2 miles down the road?
No. So the UDO says that if you have off-site parking, it needs to be within 1,000 feet of the primary use. So these I think are 400 or 500 feet
Okay.
from Memory Hall. So it does meet the distance requirement. That's something we reviewed with the applicant prior to the design for the site.
Okay.
So is this a restrictive covenant that's been recorded on the sale?
Mr. Pauly, if you will give me just a minute, I think I have all my closing documents. I just can't remember, and I don't want to tell you something that's not true. But if you'll give me a couple of minutes, I'll look up the closing documents and tell you what it is.
Okay. So you go look it up, and we'll open the meeting to the public. And, we'll open the meeting to the public. Here again, it's, anybody who wants to speak, please keep it under 3 minutes. And, first person, come forward.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, City Attorney. My name is Joyce Douglas. Been living in Lebanon for 31 years now. And we live approximately across the street from the developments and the proposed development. Before I start, may I ask you, Mr. Pauly, I have an elderly neighbor that would like to relinquish her 3 minutes to me. Is that, could we do that?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir. I would like to start by saying this meeting, this public hearing should not be held tonight. The rules are 15 days prior to the file date. The file date is prior to the public hearing. The date I have from the planning department on the file date received was May 24th. This public hearing should not be held today. Would you like me to show you the file?
I can address that after the public hearing.
Can you address it now?
Once they close the public hearing, I'll address all.
Okay, I'm going to start now. Because that was my big question, was why are we holding this if you don't follow the rules? It's so easy to do the right thing. And you have to understand what we as the neighborhood have gone through in regarding to this developer landlord. He has flipped the previous area, which a developer is fully allowed to do. He's flipped and sold it 4 years from the tax abatement falling off.
15 seconds, please.
That's it? I said I'm starting back. You started timing me when I was asking about the code. The code says 15 days prior. I haven't even started. I was asking questions about the code and questioning why this meeting's being held.
Continue for a few minutes.
I have 3 minutes. I asked for 3 minutes.
And you've got 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I looked at the clock wrong.
Okay, thank you, sir. First building setback, UDO 60 feet. He's asking 7.5 feet. That's ridiculous. Parking space, 20 to 18. I'm going to show you the difference between 2 feet. Right here, this vehicle got hit and the scattered debris was there 2 days ago. That's the difference between 2 feet. You can go on the square right now and trucks are sticking out and you have to cross the yellow line into incoming traffic. It's dangerous. It doesn't make sense. And no other city like Lebanon has that ruling. It must be 20 feet. Maximum lot coverage, 85% from 65 UDO. Flooding, runoff into neighbors' yards. The biggest thing, 12% open space to 2%. Do you know what that means? Drainage. And I will also say the numbers are incorrect in the planning from the previous meeting that we didn't even get notification in time for. I would like to say how important open space is. It's critical. The only time they allow that low of an open space request is for a park or a playground. I'm going to end by saying he's twisted the numbers to make more of a he's got 9 3-bedrooms, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. They hold more than 1 person, 2 persons, or 3 persons. The parking is a disaster in our neighborhood. It has created unsafe areas. And all these people on our sewer, I met with the director, the stormwater manager, Ryan Ottinger, and he told me and stated to me and another person,
Time's up.
okay, that this capacity will create a problem for our plant and infiltration and backup sewage, which has happened at Memory Hall.
Ma'am, your
will
time is
happen.
up.
Thank you.
John Douglas, 409 North Meridian Street. I'm a 32-year resident of Lebanon and a voter. I'm gonna whip through this really fast. I think it's absolutely atrocious that you're gonna limit the discussion on this to 3 minutes when every city in the world is asking for voter participation in their process. As board members, you might be wondering the reason that you are again dealing with the issues involving this project. Our planning department attempted to remove the requirement for visitor parking city-wide for multifamily dwellings. That proposal was defeated by our city council. not only defeated by our city council, unanimously defeated by our city council. When that happened, this developer no longer had enough parking places. That's why you're back here discussing this. That and the total ineptness of mailing out a certified mail. I've got a 14-year-old that could do that job. Our very lame requirements then allowed this developer to remove some two-bedroom apartments and make them three-bedroom apartments because our lame requirements here in Lebanon have the same parking requirements for a three-bedroom as it does for a two-bedroom. My 96-year-old mother passed away a few years ago, and she had many lifelong sayings that she regularly used. One of them was, you can't put 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. If you sitting up there know how to do that, please get with me. We will patent that process, and we'll all become very rich. The toilets in this project now total 57. 5 homes that came down on that property totaled approximately 15 toilets. We're going from 15 toilets to 57 toilets on the same sewer line. The sewer system is no different than the sewer a line that runs behind all the homes on North Meridian Street, all the homes on Northeast Street. Sure, they've been lined, and line helps the flow, but it doesn't help the volume. Zionsville got it right, and Lebanon got it wrong. This flats project has been a mess. Zionsville nixed a very similar project. One result of that is that they now have a Democrat mayor. Lebanon has cars from the existing buildings loading our streets on North, Williams, and North Meridian streets because there's not enough adequate parking space. And you now want to add to that. Another of my mother's famous sayings was, you can't teach common sense. The Republicans want to tout themselves as the party of common sense. And of course, our city government here is loaded with Republicans. Where's the common sense? Approving this project is synonymous to letting Walmart or Kroger exist with 50 parking spots. Again, this is atrocious that people come to this meeting and are cut off. Atrocious.
Anybody else care to speak?
Hello, my name is Pamela D'Amico. My husband and I are business owners at 403 North Lebanon Street, so we're in between the flats and what the new incoming apartments are going to be. Our biggest concern is safety and health. The parking is the biggest thing, and as Lori pointed out, that parking on the north side where the handicap, they want to put those, that's an alley. And it's right up against all those other little apartments that's next to Domino's Pizza. You're going to have, when you have everybody trying to come into that area, at different times of the day and night, and trying to race into the alley to get into the parking lot behind the building. And then also the other entrance is at the south end next to our business, and that's a parking lot. Those are the only 2 entrances off of Lebanon Street that they're going to have. The rain runoff is another issue. You have a lot of blacktop going around in parking areas, and it's going to rain off into the grass area. Another thing that's not been brought up is dogs. They come out of the apartments, the owners have doggy bags. Sometimes they use them, sometimes they don't. They go into the residents around there, and they do their thing. The dogs. They don't pick up. And I can vouch for that because I can't tell you how many times I've picked up. And my husband has gone out and told them, don't let your dogs come here. There's not enough green space around the apartments. There's a trash problem as well because the trash gets overloaded and it goes everywhere and the wind takes off with it. There's no smoking inside of the building. It's an all-wood building. There's no steel. There's no elevators. They smoke outside before they get in the building. These cigarette butts go all over. Just last week, I picked up 78 cigarette butts. They're in the street on Williams Street. They're all over our yard. They're in the parking lot. I have pictures taken. I have pictures taken of, and I've seen mold trucks in the parking lot over there at the flats. They've had mold issues. That's not been brought up, but they have had them. And I have a picture of when they were building that building of the wall boards going up and they were laying in water, dirty water. I have pictures. And then they came out, the builders came out, wiped them down with a cloth, like a kitchen cloth, and put them in those apartments. Their lighting, they want to get lighting more. Well, that's going to go in everybody's bedrooms around there. What else can I say? Sewage, they've had backup in the sewage underneath the gym. They've had sewage in there, and they've had to cap it off.
Your time's up. Thank you.
My name's Roger Hogan. I lived in this 116 West William Street for 32 years. I'm on the corner there where the alley is, adjacent to the property behind me. A very low area behind me, at least 3 feet, done measured it. When they fill it in, they're gonna drown me. You understand what I'm saying? They're gonna drown me. That's all I got to say about it. That's exactly what will happen.
Thank you.
Good evening, Paul Van Clay, 404 North Meridian Street. I'll just bring up a few points. Some have already been brought up. The green space, I also have to pick up or step in dog refuge. I do have a dog. The dog stays in the backyard. When I mow the front yard, I have to deal with it or walk through it. Also, if there's any children in that project, there's nowhere but the alley for them to play in. If you look at the plans, they're either going to be in the alley or the parking lot. Let's see, infrastructure, electric, water, and especially sewer. I've lived in the house for 21 years, no issues with sewage backup. So if I do have sewage backup, I will have an issue even more with the project. Traffic on the alley and on Howard Street. It just seems like too many houses in that, or too many people, too many cars traveling in that location. The previous property owner, Mr. Blake, 315 Lebanon Street, it's also marketed the flats, same as 315 flats. So we can basically assume it's going to be developed one like the other. What I want to show you is maybe the other side that Blake doesn't show you. The side that I get to look at while I eat breakfast. Looks like a college dormitory. Trash is overflowing, no gates on the trash. So if you live close to where the The new dumpster's going. Here's your trash, and I can leave these pictures with you. You got keep of the building. Here's the steps out of the gymnasium. You can't really see it there. Too close. But it's crumbling, it's falling apart, falling into the alley. Some of the other pictures I took right before the previous meeting, so I'm not staging, pictures that, oh, this is the worst one. So Saturday I went out, I took a picture. They picked up Friday morning. This is Saturday. You can see it's overflowing over the top. Let's fast forward to Sunday afternoon. We're well above and well out of the containment. Can it get much worse? Sunday evening. It's well over the top, it's outside, and it's piled up the side. This morning, the dumpsters were picked up, trash still outside. Where did the trash go? Went into the dumpster, so currently today, the dumpsters are nearly full.
Time's
So
up.
when you have a building like this, people leave trash outside, which I get to pick up.
Time's up. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else care to step forward? We will close the public end of the meeting. Ben, do you want to address a couple of the issues?
Yeah, we'll start with the issue on the dates that were identified by the first speaker. The applicant did submit revised plans on May 24th. The application, though, had been submitted prior to the April meeting back in March sometime. So in terms of the filing deadline for the application, they filed in March for the April meeting, but then they had revised the plans that they submitted on May 24th, and that's perfectly acceptable in terms of submitting revised plans. Now, if they had submitted an application at that time, then they would have been on the next month's agenda. But all they were submitting was revised plans, not the application. So there was no issue in terms of deadlines for the application. They were able to submit those revised plans. In fact, that happens a lot because we have filings for the Planning Commission, then the Technical Advisory Committee reviews them after the application's been made. And so they're required to make revisions to those plans after the Technical Advisory Commission meeting. So a lot of the revisions on those plans came from the TAC meeting that we held, it actually was probably like a month or two ago now because it was held back in April. So they did submit revised plans based on those TAC comments. In terms of, there are a lot of general comments just about the development itself, not too many necessarily addressed specifically to the 8 variance requests. Flooding and drainage was mentioned. They are required, like any other development, to meet our stormwater and drainage ordinance. So that's something that it's under review. Christopher Burke Engineering does all the reviews for the city. They review their drainage plans based on that stormwater ordinance. They're required to meet everything in there, just like every other development would be. So actually, in most cases where you got an infill project like that, where your site's restricted, they actually do underground detention. We've had other projects do underground detention, so they'll actually detain all the water under the parking lot and then release it into the storm sewer at an adequate rate. So there should not be any water running off into neighboring properties. They are not allowed to do that. That's something that, and when it goes to the review, both from an engineering and utility perspective, they will review all those things to make sure that everything's adequately contained, the water within the site into the detention facility underground, and then released to the stormwater system that's around the site. I'll try to explain the lighting again. It was mentioned that the lights will be spilling into the neighboring properties. I'll try to explain it again. I think I did. So what they're wanting to do is provide just a little bit additional light to light the alleys, just to provide some additional safety to those alleys that are around this property. The light will not spill onto neighboring properties. They're not permitted to do that. We would have wanted them to do that. Well, the way the ordinance is written, it says at your property line, or in this case, at the applicant's property line, they can't be above 0.3. What they're wanting to do is just have slightly more intense light so that it'll spill out into the alley and provide lighting to the alley, but not exceed that 0.3 at neighboring properties boundaries. So that's the situation. They're trying to light the alley. There will be no light spills on neighboring properties, but they've got a lighting plan that shows they'll be below 0.3 by the time it gets to any neighboring property boundaries. It's just the alley that will have some additional lighting. So there will not be any light that spills on neighboring properties. Again, a lot of conversation about parking. They have provided the parking that's required, the number of spaces required. So in terms of how they've done that, they've met the ordinance requirements the way it's written today, and that's what they're required to do. So those are the things that I think I could generally address as it relates to ordinance, et cetera. I don't know if Mr. Blake has some additional.
Okay, Mr. Blake, you want to come back up?
So in answer to the previous question regarding, Ben, can I close your computer here? In regards to how are the 14 parking spaces secured for the flats of Lebanon and Memory Hall? We did a grant of parking easement that we granted an easement which obligates the property that we're talking about tonight, an easement on that property for parking for the flats of Lebanon and Memory Hall. Now, this is similar to what we did in a project in Frankfurt, where all of our parking for our project is on county property. And what the county granted to us is similar to this. They granted us a parking easement that doesn't terminate, and so we have the right to park on the county's parking lot. We don't own the parking lot. And if the county decided to sell the parking lot, the easement would still exist on the county parking lot. And the same is true here. If we ever decided to sell the project that we're talking about today, the easement, just like any easement, would travel with the property. Does that make sense? And I did take this easement document and I sent it to Ben as soon as I pulled it up. So he has access to that. And that document, like any easement document, is a recorded document. Does that answer that question? Any further ones?
With any, like any easement, they can't be fenced off or anything like that, right, Mr. Blake?
There's nothing in the easement that grants the owner of Memory Hall the right to do anything like that. They simply have access to 14 parking spaces on this property.
So there's no physical, like you couldn't put your finger on the parking spot that is part of that easement. It's theoretical.
That's right. It's, if you will, it's kind of like a blanket easement on a piece of property, if that makes sense.
And it has been recorded.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about that, the 14 parking spaces? Because I wanted to address a few other concerns that were raised. I certainly appreciate Mr. Hogan's concern about his property and us draining and flooding him out. I would be concerned as well. That can't happen, as Ben said. We have to manage the drainage from our property, and as Ben stated, we're installing a rather expensive underground stormwater retention system in order to handle all of that. So any concerns about flooding or drainage onto other properties it just is not consistent with what we have to do design-wise and be approved by the City of Lebanon and Burke Consulting to have drainage that will prevent that from happening. I would say regarding the parking standards here in Lebanon, there's a fair amount of concern about the amount of parking. And I would just say, as I encouraged you a couple of months ago, I would just encourage you to drive there on some, after the meeting tonight. And I've done that myself many times. The last time I did that on the flats of Lebanon, Memory Hall property, which I emphasize again, we no longer own and have no responsibility for trash pickup or anything like that, that the parking there, the last time I checked, there were 20 open parking spaces on the site on a Monday night when presumably everyone would be home. I could go on and answer a number of the issues. The issue with children playing, I get it. I have a son who lives in Manhattan. Children in an urban environment, they go to the local park, and you guys have plenty of great local parks. That's what you do if you live in a downtown setting. We would certainly be open to the idea, if people are concerned about the lighting that we're putting in the alleys, we'd be happy to take it away. We think it's the right thing to do, but if you would prefer that that not be the case, that only happens on the east property line and the north property line because they're alleyways. There is a process for filing complaints if there are trash problems or the property is not being handled properly. We received a few of those ourselves when we owned the property, and I encourage you to call the planning department, and they have a person who, I promise you, calls you as a property owner and says you have a problem. So I would encourage people to do that. And regarding sanitary sewer capacity, these things are able to be calculated as to the capacity of that sewer line, lined or unlined or whatever. An engineer can calculate the capacity of the line, and it has been determined that there is plenty of capacity in that sanitary sewer line for the 39 units that we're proposing. I will end with that, and happy to answer any questions you all have.
Any questions?
I have one for Ben.
Oh, you have a question? I guess they're all for Ben.
The trash, that is a problem, in my opinion. I think, if it's gonna be similar setup for this development as it is for the existing flats, one dumpster for, 40 units? How many
Yeah,
units?
so Memory Hall in the Flats has 109 units and there's one dumpster. That probably was an issue when that was approved, one dumpster. This will be one dumpster for 39 units. We've got less than half the number of units with one dumpster.
To be fair, there are two dumpsters. There are two dumpsters. One dumpster is over on the south building, serves 21 units. And so the one that Ben is referring to would probably serve 88 units.
And how could we get a stipulation put, because I've seen in apartment complexes, they've got the gate, and then you walk around the side to throw your trash in. The dumpsters be hidden completely on all four sides.
So there are gates on that enclosure. I think what's happening is that people are throwing trash in, they're propping them open, and then they're not closing them. So we've actually, I know Matt's had a number of conversations with the property owner and managers to try to make sure that they keep those gates closed. As you guys are probably aware of, when people are moving out, it's usually on a Saturday or Sunday, so it is getting overloaded. We definitely see that that's an issue. By a lot of times, certainly not all the time, but a lot of times by the time we go out to investigate on Monday, they've had trash pickup already on Monday morning. And most of it, sometimes like the pictures that Mr. Van Clay had, it's not always picked up. But it is usually picked up by the time we get out there on Monday. Is that they're picking up four times a week? They're picking up 3 times a week now, and we've talked to them about increasing the number of pickups. But I don't think they do trash pickup on the weekends, so it would always be on a weekday.
I do have another question about the parking depth, 18 feet. How do we come about that? And what's the allowance? I mean, how do we get to that allowance? Because I just know, being a truck guy myself, that basically you can't park a truck in 18-foot parking space.
Yeah, I mean, unless you park well, your truck barely fits in a 20-foot parking space. I mean, unless you really pull in, pull up. But there are communities that have 10 by 18 required. Some do 10 by 20. Some do 9 by 20. Ours is 9 by 20 is the standard. We have parking spaces that aren't 20 feet long. The angled spaces they show in the picture, I don't know what the depth is on those. We'd have to go out and measure and see exactly what those are. They could be 18, they could be 16. I don't know. So we'd have to do some investigation there. But other than a full-size pickup truck, every vehicle fits in an 18-foot parking space if it's parked well. That's always the assumption you make. But as we all know, there are people that don't park very well and don't pull in very far. So really, we're accommodating 80 to 90% of the vehicles in an 18-foot parking space. There are some that would bleed out into the aisles. You've got a 24-foot two-way drive aisle out there that would allow people to be able to get through there if there happens to be a full-size pickup truck that parks in there.
Hey, Ben, could you clarify our process for notification? Like what
Yes.
What happens, what triggers the notification? what type of information is provided when that notification is made?
We send notification to neighboring property owners. We are required to distribute those at least 10 days prior to the meeting. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be delivered 10 days prior to the meeting because we have no control over the post office. Remember, we have to send them certified mail return receipt, so that does also require somebody to be there to accept and sign for the letter. So in some cases, we have homeowners that were not homeowners, usually they're landlords, and so they often don't accept the certified mail at their address. So usually certified mail is delivered within 2 to 3 business days. Sometimes it takes longer. I don't know why. It appears sometimes that they go to a regional facility for sorting and then come back, and they always take longer when it goes to the regional facility, because we're able to at least generally track where the mail's going. And about half of the notices on this project were delivered within 2 days, and then the other half were all 5 or 6 days. And I don't know the difference in why some of them were 2 days and why some were 6, but it appeared that of those that were delivered later, they all went to a regional sorting facility first and then came back for delivery.
I'm assuming it's a boilerplate form
Yeah,
notice?
it indicates information fairly similar to what's provided in the agenda in terms of location. Here's generally the type of project. Here's the variances being requested. We have started providing at least a little bit more information about the location of the site. We provide, in some of them, if we can, an aerial photo so they can see the exact site we're talking about. But it does indicate exactly what the state and our local rules of procedure require. Date, time, location of the meeting, the general request is being made, and by who.
Okay, so no like details of the application?
Well, yeah, we're not sending out a staff report
Right.
or anything like that.
Okay.
It just generally states kind of what the agenda does. Here's the type of project. Here are the general variance requests that are
Okay.
on the agenda.
Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, do we want to take these individually or as a group?
We need to do them individually.
Okay. So, it's motion time.
Mr. Pauly, do you want to identify which one you want them to start with so they can kind of give them a little bit of
Sorry?
direction?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll go down the list, but I need a motion first.
Well, I just say, which one do you want them to consider first? Just identify
Oh,
which
well, okay, I see, I'm sorry. So we'll start and go down the list with variance number 1, which is the front building setback.
I gotta get, okay.
Everybody willing to make a motion one way or the other?
I'll make a motion regarding the front building setback, front setback of 7.5 feet to more closely mirror the adjacent structures to the subject site.
I'll second that motion.
Yeah,
Motion to approve. Is that-
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Pauly,
No.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carried 3-2. Variance number 2 is parking space dimension, 9 feet wide, 20 feet deep. They're now going to be 9 feet wide, 18 feet deep. I need motion on that, please.
Ben, that's just the rear, right? The two sides are 20 feet, is that correct?
Say that again. On parking spaces?
The north and south end parking, those are 20?
I believe so, but let me pull up the plan real quick.
I just want to make sure on that.
So the ones to the north are 9 by 20. The ones to the south of the building are not identified, but I believe they're also 9 by 20. So it's just the ones to the rear of the building where there's some restricted space there between the building and the alley to make, and again, we're trying to make sure we maintain the landscape perimeter on the alley. So it was either landscape perimeter or the smaller parking spaces. So yes, that you're correct. North and south are all 9 by 20s.
Okay, did we get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve UDO section 7.5, point C, point 12, parking space dimensions.
Ben, do you want to clarify for the record that that's in a specific location? Or should we, or is it?
We can, if we wanted. Maybe just per the proposed site plan.
Okay, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Want to do that?
Yes. Per the proposed site plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
No.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries 4-1. Request number 3 is a maximum lot size,
Clarification, lot coverage.
lot coverage,
Yeah.
maximum lot coverage. Need a motion, please?
Make a motion to approve docket 21-20, variance request number 3, maximum lot coverage.
Second, please.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
That motion carries 5-0. Okay, variance number 4, lighting intensity.
Motion to approve variance request number 4, light intensity on docket 21-20.
Second.
Okay, have a motion, second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
No.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-2. Variance request number 5, parking space maneuvering in the right-of-way, UDO, section 7.5, point C, point 5. Need a motion?
This is the parking backup?
Yeah, the parking space backing into the alley.
Can we put a stipulation on moving the handicap to the east, to the south side? How's that work?
We can certainly do that.
When was that now again? I lost track of these.
Number 5.
Number 5.
I make a motion to approve docket 21-20, number 5, backing up into the right-of-way with the expectation that the parking spaces, the handicap parking spaces will be moved to the south end of the property.
Second.
Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Polly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
No.
Okay, that motion carried 4-1. Variance number 6, the minimum living area per dwelling unit. Can I ask one question on that? Did you say, one of you say there was only one unit that was below the 750?
There's one type of unit. Let me see if I can find real quick how many there are. There's probably a couple of them per floor at the most. Let me get to the right page here. Give me a second here. I gotta scroll through and find the right page. So it is, which unit is it? I believe it is unit. Which unit is it? Let's see if I did I identify it. I had these notes in my office.
Well, there's a minimum number, correct?
Yeah, there's, like I said, I believe if there's anything, there's one or two per floor, so there may be 4 or 6 total of the 39. There were not many.
Okay. We get a motion for request number 6.
Variance request number 6, to approve docket 21-20, minimum living area per dwelling unit.
Need a second?
Second.
Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries also. Variance number 7 is a side building setback.
And just for clarification, this is the side building setback on the north side of the building only, not, it's just the north side.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve variance number 7, side building setback on docket 2120.
I'll second the motion.
Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
For clarification, same one as side yard setback?
Side yard setback, yeah, side building, side yard setback on the north side. So they're required 50 and they have, the actual setback is 33 and a half feet on the north side of the building.
Aye.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the last one is variance number 8, percentage of open space.
I'll make a motion to approve variance request number 8 on docket 2120, percentage open space.
Need a second, please.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
No.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carried 4-1. All of the requests were approved. Thank you, everybody, for voicing opinions and so forth. We will go on to docket number 21-35. Gary Ladd for ATEC Electrical Contractors, property located at 419 Ransell Road in Lebanon. The property is zoned planned business commercial and is comprised of 1.6 acres. Ben?
All right, a little bit of background here. ATEC Electric has been located at this site for some time, and they're looking to add some capacity here at the site, some additional storage for materials and trucks and things like that. And this is a little bit of an interesting site if they want to pull this up, out here on Ransdell Road. We've got, obviously a very narrow frontage out on the street. The building is tucked back in behind another use, and it's actually fairly close to this property line here that we've actually identified it as a side property line since it's not adjacent to the street. So there's a number of things going on here. The first is the existing building doesn't meet the required setback in the zoning district. So I'll show you the expansion here in a minute. But in order to expand onto the building, the expansion also will not meet the setback requirement because they're attempting to add it onto the existing building. So where you've got an existing non-conforming building, you're adding onto it, you're not going to be able to meet the setback. So they are requesting, that is one of the requests, is for that side setback to allow the addition to the building to have the same setback as the existing building. The other thing at play here is because of the expansion that's being proposed, the way the ordinance is written, it requires the site to be brought up to current standards. So as you can see, you got a number of things going on here. They've got some existing parking area that's gravel, there's not landscaping and things like that. So the existing site, again, has some things where it doesn't conform with the current standards that are in place today. So what we've done is we've worked with the applicant to get some compromises in terms of some upgrades that they're going to provide to the site, and then also allowing them some variances to allow some of the existing features in the site to remain as part of the expansion. And that's essentially what we've got for you here tonight. And with that, I'll go over to the plan so we can kind of take a look at those. So actually, I'll tell you what. We'll go to the landscape plan because I can look at several elements at once. Let me zoom in for you here.
How close is the building now to the property line?
Let me go back for you. Let's see, did I identify it in the staff report? No, it's on the site plan. Let me go back and find it for you here.
I found 10.3.
Okay, is that?
Got it.
Yeah, you're a little over 10 feet from the property line. And in this area, 15 feet is required. So there's about a variance request of about 5 feet to allow, again, the existing building to remain in its current spot. The way our ordinance is written right now would say you got to bring the whole site up to standards, which would require them to pick up and move the building or remove 5 feet of the building in order to meet that standard. And then also make sure his expansion meets that same standard. So here it kind of gives you an idea of what they're proposing. So this here is the existing building, and they're adding on to the south end of it, extending directly south and then further to the east with a proposed building addition that you see here. It does, other than this side setback that mirrors the existing building, they do meet all the other required setbacks that are required in terms of the building addition. They have also identified here there's some existing landscaping that's both on the eastern property line to the back and then also in front of the area actually where the building addition is going to go. That's already existing, and that will remain post-project. The existing drive and some of the parking area around the building is all asphalt or concrete, and then some of this additional space at the back is gravel. You can see here what they're proposing is to maintain the surfaces the way you see here. The other thing we talk about with them is providing some additional landscaping, parking lot perimeter landscaping in some targeted areas, just to provide some upgrades to the site in order to meet some of our current standards. And so what we did, let me go find it, here we go. So they are going to meet our parking lot perimeter landscaping requirement on the north end. It would be not necessarily, it's not terribly visible from State Road 32, but there is some visibility to the north. So what we want to do is dress up that side of the parking area as much as possible. And then also provide some additional landscaping to the front of the existing building where it would be visible from Ransdell Road. So they have provided some of this additional landscaping that you see here in order to dress up the existing building and the perimeter of the parking area that you see here. But again, because of the existing conditions on the site and the proposed addition, there are a number of variances that they need to request. Again, the first is the parking lot perimeter landscaping. Again, like I mentioned, the whole site needs to be brought up to current standard, so it would require parking lot perimeter landscaping all the way around the parking area. And so what they've done is they've proposed the perimeter landscaping on the north side and on the west side, but not on the east side, which is the gravel area. And also they do have some landscaping on the perimeter of the property that provides some screening back there, but are requesting relief to not have to provide that parking lot perimeter landscaping along this east side of the parking area. So again, a compromise with them to provide some of that landscaping, allow some of the existing conditions to remain. The second is parking area paving, again, associated with the existing conditions on the site. They have asked to maintain the existing gravel area. They're not intending to expand it in any way. This is essentially just a request to allow them to keep the existing conditions on the site, which are partially asphalt and concrete and partially gravel. Same with the request for curbing. Right now, there is no curbing on the site. Typically, you wouldn't curb a gravel parking lot anyway, but the way the site works now, this all sheet drains. So if you were to require curbing, that would require the entire site to be changed, do an additional underground storm sewer, et cetera. So what makes the most sense here is allow that existing condition to remain and just make sure that that water is sheet draining properly to the appropriate storm sewer locations. Parking lot interior landscaping, another one associated with maintaining existing conditions. Again, if we were to go back and try to get that 5% interior space, you're really changing the way the site works, where the trucks can go. You're providing just some limitations to how they can get trucks in and out of that site if you provide some of that interior landscaping. So again, the applicant's requesting relief from that to allow the existing condition to remain, which is what you see here in this site plan. And the fifth one we've already talked about is the side setback. That side setback request is allowed the existing building to remain 10.3 feet from that side property line, and then it'll also allow the proposed building addition to have the same side setback as the existing building of 10.3 feet that you see here along this western property line. And the final one is building materials. In any non-residential zoning district, you're not permitted to have all metal buildings. Other than we say agricultural districts, we don't actually have an agricultural zoning district, or the general industrial district, which this is not that zoning district. So what they're attempting to do is mirror the existing architecture of the existing building on the site, which is a metal building, as are a number of buildings along this corridor. They have provided some upgraded color changes, et cetera, to try to break up that facade. You know, they're providing a darker gray and a lighter gray that you see here. They're adding some windows to the facade, again, to break that facade. So they have added some architectural features to the building, but it is an all-metal building that they're requesting to put up that would mirror the architecture of the existing building. So they have requested relief from that requirement to allow them to expand the building similar to the existing building materials. With that, we have identified the 3 criteria on each variance request that we need to be answered in the affirmative in order to approve the variance request, and those are available in the staff report for the record. And with that, staff has recommended approval of each of the 6 development standards variance requests that I have identified here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't think we have any at this time. Mr. Ladd available, step forward.
Good evening, Board. I'm Gary Ladd with Ladd Engineering. We put together the development plans for ATEC Electric. Also here this evening is Shane Connor, who's the owner of ATEC, in case you have any questions for him. But I really don't have anything to add to what Ben had discussed, but would be happy to try to answer any questions if you have any.
Is it possible to, I realize the other building is metal, and I saw in the rendering that you're only going to give us 3 feet of color change on a 16-foot building. Is it possible to take that a little higher?
Well, that's an existing building.
Okay, your existing building has the 3, you want to come forward up here? So your existing building is only 3 foot high, right?
I couldn't tell you how high it is, but I can tell you my goal is to match it all the way around. I just thought that would look a lot better.
Probably would. I didn't realize that.
And I don't want to say it's 48. I guess I really don't know. I'm not going to speak to that because I really have not measured it.
Okay, that's fine. At least I know why you're keeping it where you are.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, well, thank you. It is a public meeting. If anybody cares to come forward, we will close the public end of the meeting. And take them all at once or individually? Okay, take them all at once. Need a motion, please.
Make a motion to approve docket 21-35 to approve.
Second.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Kelly?
Mark Vanneman,
Aye.
Chad Kiger,
Aye.
Bruce Pauly,
Aye.
Ron Edwards,
Aye.
Lori Gross.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations, good luck. Do we have any old business to take care of? Okay, then before we close the meeting, the next meeting will be Monday, July the 6th, at 7 PM. Need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is that date right?
July the 6th.
Monday was the 5th.
Okay. Okay, Ben.
It's July 5th.
I think it's,
Next meeting's July 5th.
And that's July 4th observed.
I may have put the wrong date on there, because I think we observe on the Monday.
On the
Yeah, I think
Monday,
it's-
So
yeah.
it's,
So it should be-
it's Tuesday, July the 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the meeting will be Tuesday, July the 6th.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, we had a motion, now I need a second.
Second.
Okay, Chad seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Still, I know.